Are you not entertained? Russell Crowe's roar in Gladiator didn't just electrify the Colosseum, it echoed across cinema history. Gladiator wasn't just a sword and sandal epic, it was chaos, ambition, and danger stitched into celluloid. Behind the sweeping shots and rousing score lurked injury, death, and drama the cameras weren't meant to capture. This wasn't simply a movie about Rome's might, it was a battlefield where actors bled, animals turned feral, and directors clashed with studios. Today, we're pulling back the curtain with 15 weird facts about Gladiator, secrets buried beneath the sand and blood. And wait until you hear the bonus fact. It's the kind of revelation that reshapes how you see the entire film. Let's dive in. Russell Crowe hated the script. Russell Crowe may embody Maximus now, but at first he despised the script. He famously told director Ridley Scott, "Your lines are garbage, but I'm the greatest actor in the world, and I can make even garbage sound good." It wasn't bravado, it was frustration. The screenplay went through endless rewrites during shooting. Writers, including William Nicholson and John Logan, scrambled to fix dialogue overnight. Scenes would be handed to actors minutes before the cameras rolled. Crowe demanded constant changes, reshaping lines to feel more authentic. Yet that tension forged the unforgettable speeches Maximus delivers, lines that sound ancient but burn with modern fury. Ironically, the very words he scorned became the ones etched into movie history. What audiences didn't know? The script they heard was often half-improvised, born from clashes rather than polish. Oliver Reed's death-shook production. The legendary Oliver Reed, who played Proximo, died suddenly of a heart attack midway through filming. He collapsed after a drinking contest in Malta, reportedly outlasting sailors in a bar challenge. His death was catastrophic for the production. Major scenes remained unfinished. Instead of cutting his character, Ridley Scott used body doubles and pioneering CGI to complete Reed's role. For 2000, these effects were groundbreaking and controversial. The film had to digitally graft Reed's face onto another actor for certain moments, costing millions. Some critics called it morbid, others saw it as a fitting tribute. Audiences didn't realize that in Reed's final scenes, they were watching both man and machine stitched together. His ghost lingered in every frame, adding eerie weight to Maximus's farewell. The tiger fight was real. When Maximus faces tigers in the arena, many assumed it was pure CGI magic, but Scott insisted on practical ferocity. Real tigers, each weighing nearly 500 pounds, were brought to the set. To protect Russell Crowe, handlers used thin chains attached to the ground, keeping the animals just far enough away. But the margin for error was razor thin. In one take, a tiger leapt within a hair's breadth of Crowe before handlers yanked it back. The actor admitted later, "I don't think I've ever been closer to death." What viewers saw wasn't digital trickery, it was genuine predator versus actor tension, played out under hot lights and rolling cameras. Not fake danger, but life and death stakes masked as entertainment. A stuntman was nearly killed. Behind the spectacle of chariot battles lay brutal accidents. Stuntman Billy O'Brien was thrown from a chariot when a mechanism malfunctioned. He was dragged at high speed, crashing into solid structures. Cameras kept rolling as chaos erupted on set. Miraculously, he survived, though he suffered severe injuries. The production had already been fraught with risks. Real weapons, fiery explosions, unstable animals, and this accident pushed the crew to demand stricter safety measures. Yet Scott pressed forward, unwilling to compromise the authenticity of the battles. Ironically, the footage of violent crashes that looked so terrifying on screen wasn't staged. It was born of real danger. The line between performance and survival blurred, giving the action an unsettling authenticity. Joaquin Phoenix struggled with Commodus. Joaquin Phoenix, cast as the cruel Emperor Commodus, wrestled with insecurity. He doubted he could match Crow's intensity. In rehearsal for the infamous scene where Commodus tries to kiss his sister Lucilla, Phoenix panicked and fled set, overwhelmed by the character's darkness. Ridley Scott pushed him relentlessly, reminding him that Commodus wasn't meant to be likable but chilling. Phoenix later said he was terrified of Crow, both on-screen and off. But that fear fed into his performance. The quivering lips, the uneasy glances, the nervous energy weren't staged. They were real. His Commodus wasn't just a villain. He was a boy, drowning in self-hatred and fear. Audiences didn't realize they were watching an actor break down in real time and transform it into haunting cinema. Russell Crowe's injuries were brutal. Russell Crowe didn't walk away from Gladiator unscathed. He endured a string of injuries that nearly halted filming. He cracked a hip bone, sliced his face, and damaged tendons in his foot during battle sequences. One wound on his cheek even required stitches, leaving a faint scar that makeup artists struggled to hide. Crowe admitted later, "By the end, I was held together by tape." The injuries weren't cosmetic. They altered how he performed. Some of his weary, limping movements weren't acting. They were survival. What audiences mistook for Maximus's suffering was Crowe's genuine pain, captured forever on film. It wasn't stuntmen carrying the worst blows. It was the lead actor himself, bleeding for authenticity. The Colosseum was half real, half illusion. The epic Roman Colosseum wasn't a full set. Instead, the crew built only a third of it, rising 40 feet high in Malta. The rest? Digital wizardry. Scott combined partial architecture with CGI extensions, creating seamless illusions of grandeur. But the real challenge was crowd scenes. Rather than fill seats with thousands of extras, the film used just 2,000 actors. Then, with a technique called crowd tiling, they digitally cloned bodies, multiplying them until the stadium roared with 35,000 spectators. What audiences didn't know was that every sweeping shot of Rome's heart was a marriage of brick, paint, and pixels. Not ancient ruins resurrected, but fragments elevated by technology. The Colosseum wasn't real, but the sweat on the extras' faces very much was. The Battle of Germania was a nightmare to film. The movie's opening sequence, set in a German forest, looks cold and feral. It was worse in reality. The crew shot in England's Bourne Woods, where winter weather shifted from freezing rain to suffocating smoke. Explosions ripped through the forest while horses bolted, arrows flew, and fire engulfed trees. Local residents complained about the destruction, accusing the production of environmental damage. Russell Crowe called it sheer hell. Equipment constantly failed in the mud, and stunt performers risked burns and trampling. Yet the chaos birthed one of cinema's most haunting opening battles. What looks orchestrated was closer to raw warfare, a set that dissolved into near-real combat. The battle wasn't simply staged, it was survived. Maximus was based on real emperors. Maximus Decimus Meridius may be fictional, but he wasn't invented from thin air. Writers pulled traits from real Roman figures like Marcus Nonius Macrinus and Narcissus, the wrestler who killed the historical Commodus. Ridley Scott insisted on grounding the character in truth, making him both legend and possibility. His journey from general to slave to gladiator mirrors historical accounts of Rome's brutal politics. Yet the film deliberately blurred history, shaping Maximus into a myth. He wasn't just a man, he was every betrayed soldier, every silenced voice. Audiences didn't know that beneath the drama lay fragments of dusty archives. Not purely fiction, but distorted history brought to life. Maximus lived and died so that Rome's ghosts could speak. Hans Zimmer's score was controversial. Hans Zimmer's sweeping score feels timeless, but it sparked a storm. Critics accused it of sounding too similar to his earlier work in The Lion King. Lawsuits even emerged, claiming parts of the music infringed on other compositions. Yet Zimmer and vocalist Lisa Gerrard created something transcendent. Gerrard's wordless singing became the film's soul, floating like an ancient prayer over the carnage. What audiences didn't realize? Many of her vocals weren't scripted. She improvised them live, channeling emotion rather than language. That haunting sound wasn't Latin, nor any human tongue. It was pure feeling. And before we push into the final 5 revelations, go ahead and like and subscribe, because what's coming next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about Gladiator. Ridley Scott fought the studio. Ridley Scott wasn't just directing a movie, he was battling the studio. DreamWorks executives worried that the script was too dark, too violent, and too confusing. They pushed for more romance, more clarity, and less brutality. Scott resisted. He cut love scenes to keep the focus on Maximus's revenge. He fought to keep the Germania sequence bloody, despite pressure to tone it down. Executives even doubted Crowe's box office appeal, preferring a more marketable lead. But Scott refused to budge, telling them, "If I compromise now, the movie collapses." His stubbornness preserved Gladiator's raw power. What audiences didn't know was that every frame they saw had already survived a behind-the-scenes war. Not studio victory, but a director's defiance carved into film. The weapons were often real. While many props were dulled or rubberized, a surprising number of the swords and spears were genuine steel. Scott believed the weight and sound of real metal made the battles authentic. Actors and stuntmen trained extensively, but accidents still happened. Blades scraped flesh, armor split open, and blood spilled. Not staged, but real. Russell Crowe recalled nearly skewering another actor during a chaotic arena fight. Even when dulled, those weapons could crush bones. What the audience assumed was movie magic was often raw physical danger. Not illusion, but reality hiding in plain sight. The clang of steel in Gladiator wasn't merely sound design, it was history reborn, at the risk of injury. Connie Nielsen demanded historical accuracy. Connie Nielsen, who played Lucilla, wasn't content to simply recite lines. A history buff, she challenged the writers on inaccuracies. She brought research on Roman women, arguing that Lucilla deserved more agency than the script allowed. Scott listened. Nielsen's persistence reshaped her character from mere pawn to conflicted strategist. She insisted Lucilla's costumes reflect authentic Roman fashion rather than Hollywood glamour. Her dedication ensured the film balanced spectacle with truth. What audiences didn't realize was that Lucilla's quiet strength came not just from script pages, but from Nielsen's insistence on respect. Not decoration, but resistance. In many ways, she was as much a guardian of history as the historians themselves. The ending was nearly different. Maximus's death feels inevitable, but it wasn't always the plan. Early drafts explored him surviving, even becoming Rome's savior. Studio executives liked the idea. It offered sequel potential. But Crowe refused. He insisted Maximus must die to complete the arc of vengeance and redemption. Ridley Scott agreed. Still, alternate endings were filmed, including versions where Lucilla's son Lucius plays a greater role in Rome's future. The final cut, Maximus walking into the afterlife, was a compromise of poetry and finality. What audiences didn't know was that their tears were nearly replaced by triumph. Not closure, but franchise bait. Crowe's stubbornness killed the sequel before it was born and gave Gladiator its haunting legacy. The real Rome was never filmed. Although the movie immerses us in ancient Rome, the production never shot a single frame there. Italy was considered, but logistical nightmares forced the crew to build Rome from scratch in Malta and use CGI extensions. Ironically, Rome's ruins were deemed too fragile and restrictive. Instead, the eternal city we see is entirely constructed illusion. Streets of mud and stone were recreated, painted, and digitally enhanced. Audiences believed they were walking through Caesar's world. In truth, they were on sound stages thousands of miles away. Not history, but artistry. The Rome of Gladiator wasn't real, but it was more alive than ruins could ever be. A sequel almost happened with Maximus Resurrected. The strangest Gladiator secret? A sequel was nearly made, written by musician Nick Cave. In his script, Maximus is resurrected by Roman gods and sent through time to fight in everything from the Crusades to Vietnam. It ended with him sitting at a desk in modern-day Washington, D.C. The project was scrapped as too insane, but drafts still circulate. What audiences never knew was that Gladiator could have become a surreal, genre-bending saga. Not historical epic, but metaphysical odyssey. Gladiator wasn't just a film, it was a war fought behind the camera. Injuries, death, accidents, and defiance all bled into the final cut. Its legacy wasn't clean, but scarred, raw, and unforgettable. 2 decades later, it still roars like a lion in the arena. If you were entertained, hit like, subscribe, and share. And remember, what we do in life echoes in eternity.